So at the end of the last class, we had talked about how water goes through membranes and how the movement of water can either cause a cell to shrivel up or it can cause a cell to swell up and burst in different scenarios. And we had been focusing on just the movement of water through cell membranes. We also talked about last time that if substances besides water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, or small alcohols are going to go through membranes, they cannot go straight through the membrane on their own. They have to pass through protein channels or protein gates or protein doorways. So that's kind of a review from last time. The other thing that we talked about last time is the concept of a concentration gradient. And we had talked about that things tend to diffuse down their concentration gradient from an area where there is more of that substance towards an area where there is less of that substance. So this would be indicating a place where there is, for example, a lot of salt dissolved in water. The salt would tend to move and spread out and diffuse toward a location where there's less salt. That's called going down the concentration gradient. Something that wants to go down its concentration gradient but can't cross through a membrane can't go down its concentration gradient unless there is some kind of doorway or channel for it to do so. So that's shown in this part of the figure right here. Here is some kind of solute, some kind of dissolved substance represented by these blue circles. There's a lot of it out here. There's less in here. This cannot cross the membrane on its own, but it can go through a doorway or a channel or a protein opening in this membrane. And if it goes down its concentration gradient through a channel or through a protein gate, that's called facilitated diffusion. So remember that diffusion is going from an area of more to an area of less. But if you need some kind of doorway or some kind of passage to cross the membrane, we say that it's facilitated diffusion. It's helped, it's facilitated by having a protein gate through the membrane. Facilitated diffusion. Okay. Does it require energy for this substance to move from here to here through this gate?
Yes.
Yes? How so?
It's moving.
Let me rephrase this question.
There.
Does the cell, that's a good answer actually, does the cell have to spend energy to get this to move?
No.
Does the cell have to do anything to get this to move?
No.
Not really. If a gate is there,
They're
it's
just-
naturally going to move from high to low concentration. So that's an example of passive transport. Passive transport does not use extra energy to move things. So all diffusion is considered passive transport. When you're passive, you just sort of sit there and do nothing. You don't use energy. Passive transport occurs when the cell is not using energy to move a substance across the membrane. So facilitated diffusion is a type of passive transport. A lot of times, cells do not find themselves in a place where they have a huge abundance of the nutrients that they need. Sometimes cells cannot depend on things passively flooding into them and supplying them with what they need. What's more likely is that a cell might find itself in a place where what it needs is scarce. So imagine that this is sugar. The cell would like to have some sugar to digest and provide energy. And that sugar is found in low concentration outside the cell and high concentration inside the cell. So in this scenario, let me reverse this. The concentration gradient of this substance across the cell membrane, it's low outside, it's high inside. But the cell would like to just gather it up as much as possible and keep it inside the cell because it needs energy. This is like hoarders. Maybe I already have 73 towers of magazines inside my house, but I need to get more and keep bringing in the house, and I use energy to do that. You ever seen that show, Hoarders? Always makes you feel better. Like, yeah, I'm really clean actually.
Kind of reminds
I'm really organized. But if the cell has something that's low concentration outside, it really needs it and it wants to store it up for later. It really needs to drag this substance against a concentration gradient from low to high. This would be like trying to gather the dye back into the drop. This is going against the concentration gradient. But sometimes cells need to do that. This type of activity requires energy. This does require the cell to spend energy to, in effect, pump this stuff from outside to inside. For example, if I wanted to make all of you get up from where you are and cram you into this corner over here so that I could save you for later or whatever, that would require energy to mush you into that corner, to pack you in. So proteins are also required for that process to catch something from out here and move it in. It acts like a pump. And this scenario is a type of active transport. Active transport needs energy. And usually the energy to do this is in the form of ATP that we talked about last time. So in this picture, the cell is spending ATP batteries or tickets to snatch something that's in low concentration outside and bring it into the cell. That's active transport. If the cell does not want to move things one at a time, but if it wants to move a lot of stuff from the inside to the outside in like a bulk manner, that's called exocytosis. Exo for exit, cyto for cell. So we have a lot of things from the inside of the cell being moved over to the outside of the cell. And this is using these little membrane compartments called vesicles to take stuff from inside, dump it outside. This also takes energy. So exocytosis is one variety of active transport. The first one is pumping proteins that we looked at on the previous slide. The second one is exocytosis. And the third type of active transport that we're going to mention in here is endocytosis. Endo as in into, cytosis, the cell. In this scenario, the cell is not picking and choosing what it gets from out here. It's just like, give me a lot of stuff, I'll take it. Just bring me a lot of stuff into the cell. It does that by creating this little pinched off bud at the plasma membrane that fuses together and becomes a vesicle that then brought in something from the outside to the inside. You heard of these before? Yeah, just a review, I figured. This is also active transport. endocytosis. The cell has to use energy to do that because it's grabbing, it's pinching, it's spending ATP to do that. This slide is a really great review. This type of topic, on the next exam, it will appear as multiple choice stuff. So definitely be looking at your Mastering Biology multiple choice on this. And there may also be some extra ones talking about what is the definition of passive transport versus active. Anything where something is moving down the concentration gradient that doesn't require energy, that's passive. Active, here we've got the pumping protein, and you should also add on to here exocytosis and endocytosis are active transport because the cell has to use energy to do this, and the energy is coming from ATP to move substances back and forth.
So you said anything moving down the concentration gradient is passive?
Generally, yes. If something is moving down the concentration gradient, that's because the concentration gradient already is there and the cell doesn't have to do work to move the substance, that's considered passive transport. So the way to imagine, I guess, passive transport is if you were to open your window in your house and you don't have screens, and there are a lot of bugs out there and they just happen to, some of them fall into your house or randomly fly into your house, that would be passive transport.
It's already sitting outside there.
There's already more outside than inside. And so they naturally tend to come out inside because there's just more out there. If I am in my house and, let's say, if I'm inside my house and a tornado is coming and all of my kids are outside and I have to go out and find them and be like, get in here, and drag them in the house, that would be like actively transporting them in the house. Because they are not naturally going to float into the house if I don't do something to get them. That would be active transport.
With a tornado, they might. magically
No,
float
they're
into
so
your house.
young they would be like, oh, cool.
Talking about like the tornado picks them up and magically
Throws them
throws
into
them
the
into your
house.
house.
That's too far-fetched. That's too far-fetched. Okay. Becca, if you would turn that off.